go, please, Mr. Hassan. Vivek, thank you for joining me on the panel. Hassan, you are an inspiring leader in sustainability and an incredible human being as well. I recommend everybody to meet Hassan later on. He has amazing experience. Hassan, we're talking about the role of insurance in disaster relief. Where do you see us playing a vital role in this from your perspective?
Thank you, Rasha. So I've been in the sustainability space for over 20 years. And one firm conclusion I've reached over time is no one, and I'll say it again emphatically, no one understands climate change like the insurance industry. It's become very fashionable for a lot of people now to talk about climate change and sustainability and ESG, but the insurance industry has been pricing risk of flooding, of other earthquakes and things. For decades, it's been your bread and butter. And whenever you talk to anyone about investments and you talk about a capital stack, there's debt and equity, and people forget about insurance. So although I am not an insurance industry person, I'm just a boring lawyer, but I recognize the role the insurance industry has played in the past, and it's been critical. Now, going forward, how I see it, things have gotten more confusing because of the increase of uncertainties, i.e. risk. So your previous risk models and your pricing was all done on historical data, meteorological data, other information. Well, climate change has kind of sent that out the window. And that makes things scary and exciting at the same time. How can you price risk that you don't fully understand? So I think it's an exciting time for the insurance industry. And they are a key partner for governments, for consumers, to sort of drive resilience in society. So that's how I look at it.
Vivek, as a consultant on ESG and also an auditor, what do you see from your point of view the role of insurance in providing solutions for disaster relief?
Yeah, very pertinent topic, and I guess hasn't really picked up in the right note. If we look at any risk, insurance is there, right? And if you look at climate change at large, it's a global risk. It's a risk of a measure which, as humankind, we haven't faced before. It's coming to us, and that's where pretty much insurance companies are basically coming up with solutions around it, how to tackle the challenges which are going to come from that. And especially the one biggest sort of very explicit outcome from the climate change that we see, that's around natural disasters. And that's where insurance had always been there. It's like, as Hassan mentioned, that it's for ages, it's for centuries, insurance companies had been looking into the risk of all the natural disasters. So I do see a big role, and that had always been there. It can never be more important as we discuss it now, because climate change, as we had been discussing about it in the yesterday's discussion as well, I mean, this is something that needs immediate urgent action. And with the experience which the insurance companies have with the natural disasters, all that historical data, that's going to provide a very empirical proof that how can a solution be structured through insurance products to fight against the challenge of the climate change.
Thank you, Vivek. And I'll share my experience as well as Howden and what we're doing in terms of solutions to tackle natural disasters. We have 10 people sitting in London specialized in climate risk and resilience. And this team is only growing by day. We have solutions on natural disasters. We started the journey 3 years ago with the volcano bond, helping the Red Cross coming up with this solution for all the active volcanoes. We have the mangrove trees in Philippines. We have the floods that also happened recently that we're working with Pakistan government on them. And so we're engaging a lot with the government and private sector on how to provide the global economy with the sustainable solutions in blended financial solutions. And talk about blended financial solutions, I'd like to ask Mr. Hassan to give his professional opinion on this, since he's the specialized one over here on the blended financial solutions.
Okay, so I think in what you have to consider, let's take a step back and look at what happens when we need financing. You can go to a venture capitalist, maybe you'll get $1 million, $2 million. You can go to a bank, you can get about to $50 million, roughly, that's their appetite. What do you need to do when you need more money? When you need heavy infrastructure investments, large projects? Well, then you go, okay, I'll go to the debt market. You go to the debt market and then you find out, well, the cost of the loan is pretty high. There's no concessional lender out there. And more importantly than that, your risk profile is such that people might not want to lend to you. That's one of the biggest problems we're seeing. So blended finance is really the public-private partnership that's now entered into. There's a leverage that the public sector or overseas development agencies come in with. I mean, they can give a grant to an NGO and say, do this good work, or they can take that same grant dollar and hand that over to someone and say, okay, we will de-risk this particular project or investment for you. And then the banks and everyone else gets very happy that, okay, and this makes it a little easier for us since we're not going to take first loss, we have the senior debt, and then they start lending. So what you end up having there with blended finance is the ability to leverage. Just to give you an example, you can, and we've done some analysis on this within my organization, and with as little as $10 billion, you can unleash about $100 billion in financing. Now that's great for areas where you need large amounts because the scale of the problem, Rasha, is immense. You look at the climate finance gap. I mean, good things happening in the UAE, and I think there's a session later on green bonds where you can talk about the market, which is about $10 billion right now. But the GCC needs $500 billion just to hit 2030. We're not even talking 2050. 2050, I don't know if I'll be alive, by the way things are going. The people who've signed off on 2050 will not be alive. So who takes the hit for that? So you've got to have that financing ready and there. So it's absolutely massive. If you look at the global requirements, they're in the trillions. Where will it all come from? It's not going to come from banks. It's definitely not going to come from governments. It's going to come from public-private partnerships, and blended finance is the enabler for that.
So this is a wake-up call for us to act now to build sustainable future for the next generations, right? We definitely live in a VUCA world. We can see that natural disaster is becoming more and more critical for humanity's survival. And so it's really important that we engage with each other and help each other find solutions. And we, as an insurance industry, we always believe insurance is a force for good. We've always been agile to provide very creative and innovative solutions for any risk. But there is still resistance in the topic of climate change, and that's very natural. In terms of resistance, how do you deal with that, Hassan, from your point?
Resistance?
Yeah.
Well, I'll pose a question to the audience here. Let's go back 200 years. Early 1800s. Railroads are coming. It's a new thing. No one understands it. You're building machines on going into territory that you do not know. No one would finance it. I put any banker here, any insurance company here, and I asked them, would you have financed or insured the railroads? They would have said no. And yet, some did. Look at the fortunes JP Morgan made. They're all on railroads, all the other American families, and all other parts of the world. Railroads were coming, so do not resist. Please, be bold. When you see risk, the opposite, great risk means great reward. So kindly seize it. You folks have always been passionate. Every time someone has a problem with their car or something, we heard about autonomous vehicles earlier, but normal vehicles, we run to the insurance companies. We look for compassion. We look for boldness. So kindly, like my message would be, do not resist. This is a great opportunity. Just a protection gap with every natural disaster happening in the world these days, the protection gap increases. It's probably sitting, and you can never really measure it, but it goes anywhere from $1 trillion to $100 trillion. That's money on the table for the insurance companies. So do not resist, be innovative, be bold, be compassionate, get those products out and make money on it. So that's my advice.
So Hassan, in other words, if you don't want to be part of making a difference to humanity, then follow the money, right?
Precisely.
Okay, thank you. Vivek, you started, you're an entrepreneur, you started your own company, Olive Guy. Would you please tell us why did you start this business and specializing on sustainability, please?
No, I guess that's a very personal one, and I always feel very proud about it. And I'll give you a little story about my career and backgrounds. I've spent my 16 years of career in working for upstream oil and gas companies. One of the biggest clients used to be ADNOC, Saudi the Ramco and KOC. So that's the sort of background I had. So in one old good days, I had been selling almost 200,000 barrels of oil a day. So whatever life left with me, even if I try to offset all of it, it won't be sufficient. So that's where I started thinking about that what really can be a matter of importance today. I mean, and this whole awakening had come during the phase when we were all facing globally the biggest challenge, right? The pandemic, the COVID. And that's where I saw that when, and all of us must have experienced the same thing. Had this been a situation in one corner of the world, people might have isolated it, the economy would have completely crumbled, right? But it was a global challenge. When look at the most sort of prosperous countries and to the most poorest one. All of us together came in and started working towards a solution, and we found solutions. We came out of it. So that's precisely one big thought, or rather I would say that the aspiration or more of inspiration that I got it, that such sort of global challenges definitely lead solution where collectively we look towards it, collectively we find the solution. And that's where I started thinking more about sustainability. What we can do as basically individuals, what exactly can we do? And that's where the very first product that we came out with at Olive Gaia was a personal carbon footprint calculator. And that's like a very, very attuned to calculations around for a UAE resident, for a Bahraini resident, for a Saudi resident, to really see in terms of out of all their consumption that they do over the day, what sort of carbon footprint that I'm going to generate. And that gives us a mind-boggling numbers. You would not believe that. However, the world average still stands 3.5 to 4 tons of carbon per person per year. The regions, the country where we are sitting in here, it has roughly 21 to 22 tons of carbon dioxide generated per person per year. So that's the sort of quantum difference. If you look at countries like Qatar, there it stands at roughly 50 tons a person per year. So that's the sort of impact that we're creating. There are several factors behind it, why we have such high sort of a carbon footprint here, but there is definitely some element of consumption. So that consumption needs to be very, very conscious. We need to be really driven about that, and that's the main purpose and motive behind Olive Gaia working towards reducing the impact of personal consumption and helping reduce the carbon footprint.
Hassan, how is your personal purpose aligned with your corporate purpose?
Rasha, that's an interesting question. I did not expect that question, Rasha.
Expect the unexpected.
I've always wanted to do good, and I wanted to do good things. And I'm a tree hugger. I started off my career, my legal career, filing lawsuits against landfills in my country. And it's just sort of aligned, like whether you work for animal welfare, anyone who has a pet here understands how deeply we love animals. And that spreads. I think doing good is important. And another thing that I think also aligns with my professional purpose and career. You see, in this day and age, hate is a very strong emotion. Let's remember that. It's very easy to hate someone. Hate generates a lot of emotions, gets a lot of reactions. Well, you need to fight that with love. And it's love for the earth, it's love for society, it's love for people, it's love for my team, it's love for a monthly salary. So all that seems to align in this space. So that's why I pursue this environmental agenda.
As a senior manager of the UICCA, what are you really in charge of? And if you can explain to the audience, what is the UAE Independent Climate Change Accelerator?
Very good, thank you. So the UAE Independent Climate Change Accelerators is a non-governmental, non-partisan organization. We're a very young organization. We were announced last year, September, at the New York Climate Week. And I myself, I've joined barely about a month ago. And we have a growing team. Our work is really to connect the dots in the climate change space. We are not, as many people seem to think, I get a lot of calls asking, are you organizing COP? No, we are not COP28 organizers. COP28 is an event. And we really work to connect the dots. So we work in 3 particular domains. There is policy and research, which I think is extremely important. We can talk about that in a bit. There's the finance domain, which I look at, finance and investment. And then there's the technology space. So you'll find that, if you look at the general milieu of climate change, the technology question's sorted. Believe me, you can go around and you can say, well, the technologies are there. You'll get a full list. In fact, there'll be people clamoring over each other just to get their technology in your face. And they might even operate to the standard and perform to the level they do. There's enough finance out there. You speak to any banker or any other person, they say, yeah, we have tons of liquidity. Where are the bankable projects? Okay, so we kind of piece all these pieces together. We talk to government, we talk to the private sector. The private sector needs particular policies, it needs broader, for example, electric vehicles or retrofitted electric vehicles, if that's a dirty word around here. Well, we're trying to do that. Well, how does that work? What policy options are required for that? New tech coming in, are there any licensing or regulatory regimes that need to be developed for that, some special concessions? So we work in all these spaces of finance, tech, policy, to really do good things. So that is the UICCA. We welcome, if anyone has any finance, tech or policy recommendation, please come around.
You're an NGO organization.
Absolutely, non-governmental.
So, Vivek, climate change is only 1% of the ESG strategies, right? Where do you see the gap in the market? And do you think that you need to be engaged with the insurance sector so we can understand the consumer better, so we can innovate better solutions?
Yes, I guess that's as we've started this conversation with the background that how insurance companies and insurance products can really help fight the issue of climate change. I guess there is a bigger collaboration that would definitely help providing insurance companies' clients a better solutions around it. And few of that we have touched upon in yesterday's conversation. We were talking about products where you have a sort of a fine hedging between the investments that an insurance company is doing today just to balance out the portfolio from the emissions perspective. That doesn't mean to chuck the coal-fired plants, that doesn't mean to chuck oil and gas investments, but at the same time you have a fine balance in terms of equating all your carbon emissions from the portfolio by investing into products or projects which actually sequesters carbon. So that is where pretty much the collaboration is required. And companies like Howden and basically other Marsh and the rest of the companies here, they can definitely come up with those innovative solutions where you offer lending, where you offer reinsurance or insurance or any sort of premium services. Along with that, you can always provide a solution around sustainability measurement. And that is the first step. As we say that until you know where you stand, you can't take your way forward. So especially with respect to anything around sustainability, the very first step is to identify your carbon footprint. Once you know your carbon footprint, you know your hot spots, where exactly the emission is lying, and that is where the whole strategy around decarbonization can be worked upon. So that's what my thought.
Thank you, Vivek.